How many of my followers chose the book of Ecclesiastes for our study? Well, that's the one that we're going to be reading. And it is found in the middle of the Bible, just after Proverbs. It is written by Solomon when he was looking back on his life and seeking to answer the question, is life worth living? He examines many different angles, argues for the positive, and in the end concludes that life is worth living only if you put God first and obey Him. As Solomon says, everything apart from God is empty, hollow, and meaningless. This week, please read an introduction to Ecclesiastes, followed by chapters 1 through 4, along with each daily devotion. You will read in the first two chapters about Solomon's personal experience. He was one person in the Bible who had everything. He had wisdom and power and riches, honor, reputation, and even God's favor. Yet discuss the ultimate emptiness of all this world has to offer. His goal was to show that earthly possessions and accomplishments are ultimately meaningless. He wanted his readers to avoid these same senseless pursuits. Is your goal in life to search for meaning, or is it to search for God who will give you meaning and a purpose? Remember, serving God leads to everlasting joy. The third chapter begins with some very familiar scripture reading from Solomon's great observations. His point here in this section is that God has a plan for all people. Thus, He provides cycles of life, each with its work for us to do. Although we may face many problems that seem to contradict God's plan, these should not be barriers to believing in Him, but rather opportunities to discover that without God, life's problems have no lasting solutions. That is faith. God has built in us a restless yearning for the kind of perfect world that can only be found in His perfect rule. Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 through 10 are a couple of my favorite verses. And Solomon says, quote, "Two are better than one, because they have good return for their work. And if one falls down, his friend can help him up." Unquote. Life is designed for companionship, not isolation. Relationships, not loneliness. Don't go it alone. We read here that we are not here on earth to serve ourselves, but to serve others and to serve God. Let's work together. Are any of you searching for happiness or find your daily routine a struggle? Please continue to read this book right along with us. This is not a new problem. This was written centuries ago by a man who had everything but struggled with happiness. God's loving forgiveness is the answer. This week's devotions are written by Heather and Tanya. And remember, biblical shakers will make reading the Bible way more enjoyable for you. And I pray that the Lord will put a hunger on your heart.